run with the story as if it were established fact without a shred of credible evidence. The uncomfortable truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Angel Reese had played the victim card one too many times, and this wasn't just an accidental slip-up. It was the smoking gun that exposed a calculated deception so brazen it would force the entire WNBA to reckon with its consequences. And the fallout. Serious issues like racism for personal gain, ultimately making it harder for genuine victims to be believed. And it raises uncomfortable questions about the role of sports media in amplifying controversy without proper scrutiny, prioritizing clicks over truth. For the WNBA,
well, it looks like Angel Reese. Well, it looks like she's just been caught in what could certainly be taken as in a lie.
This incident represents a cautionary tale about the dangers of rushing to judgment in the social media age, where unverified claims can go viral in seconds and reputations can be destroyed before the facts ever come to light. It highlights the troubling trend of public figures exploiting.
All right, all these things that she says she has dealt with over the last year, all these encounters of racism.
The moment Angel Reese leaned into the microphone and uttered even more closely than before, waiting to see how this dramatic story unfolds next. The implications of this scandal extend far beyond a single basketball game or season. At its core, those fateful words, the entire narrative she'd spent weeks building came crashing down in spectacular fashion. I've never had a negative encounter with a fan in person, ever. The room froze. Report an apology to the fans she falsely accused? Or will she double down and make an already bad situation even worse? One thing is certain. The cameras will be rolling, the microphones will be live, and this time, the entire basketball world will be watching. Reporters exchanged glances. Cameras kept rolling, capturing what would become one of the most damning admissions in recent WNBA history. In just one unguarded sentence, Reese will be competing against Caitlin Clark and the Fever. She'll be facing the relentless scrutiny of a public that now knows the truth about her deception. The pressing questions now are, will she finally take responsibility for her actions? Will she offer a genuine use with fans seated in the alleged hot zones where racist behavior supposedly occurred? They spoke with arena security personnel, concession workers, and even the office had completely contradicted everything she and her supporters had been claiming about the Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark, and the alleged racist treatment that supposedly plagued the league. But this Water versus Sky matchup this season will now carry the heavy weight of this scandal. The fans won't forget. The league office won't forget. The sports media won't forget. And the next time Angel Reese steps onto the court in Indianapolis, she won't. The entire controversy, it became painfully clear, had been manufactured in the toxic echo chambers of social media before being weaponized for sympathy and publicity. The allegations, it became increasingly clear, had been entirely fabricated. Yet despite these findings, Reese and her team continued pushing their false narrative deals. Now, that same persona had exposed her as someone willing to cry wolf about serious issues like racism for personal gain, and the professional consequences were only just beginning to materialize. Every upcoming feed-out, it's only just beginning. For weeks, the sports world had been consumed by explosive accusations that Indiana Fever fans had viciously targeted Angel Reese and her Chicago Sky team quickly. But the undisputed biggest loser in this entire fiasco was Angel Reese herself. Her carefully cultivated reputation as the WNBA's villain had once brought her endless attention, viral moments, and lucrative endorsements with racist taunts during a particularly heated matchup. Social media erupted in outrage. Major sports networks ran wall-to-wall coverage. Pundits and commentators demanded immediate action. Dignified silence throughout the entire ordeal, continued letting her record-breaking performances on the court speak for themselves. And the WNBA? The league's credibility took a significant hit for not shutting down the false narrative more decisively from the league office. The pressure became so intense that the WNBA had no choice but to launch a full-scale investigation, reviewing every angle of security footage and narrative. The WNBA's exhaustive investigation had already exposed the gaping holes in Reese's story before her accidental confession. League officials conducted dozens of interviews. Loyal fan base, unfairly smeared as racist by Reese's baseless accusations, found themselves completely vindicated by both the league's investigation and Reese's own accidental admission. Clark, who had maintained interviewing dozens of fans in attendance and meticulously analyzing broadcast audio recordings. But when the findings were finally released, the truth was undeniable and utter truth was out, and it was spreading like wildfire across sports media. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever emerged from the scandal not just unscathed, but arguably stronger than ever. The Fever's really damning. There was no evidence, no racial slurs, no hostile behavior, nothing that even remotely corroborated the explosive claims. The sudden turn of events, abruptly canceling scheduled media appearances and limiting her press access in a transparent attempt at damage control. But their efforts were too little, too late. The damning truth until she accidentally told the truth in front of rolling cameras and stunned reporters. The press conference should have been completely routine. Another disappointing loss, and in particular found itself in an embarrassing predicament, forced to awkwardly backtrack on weeks of breathless coverage that had treated Reese's allegations as indisputable fact. Even Reese's normally slick PR team seemed caught flat-footed for the struggling Chicago Sky. Another round of softball questions about Reese's performance on the court. But when a reporter innocently asked how she dealt with the constant online criticism, Reese's media personalities who had uncritically amplified her accusations now found themselves facing intense scrutiny and ridicule for their lack of journalistic rigor. ESPN's response sent shockwaves through the entire basketball world. "Honestly, I don't even worry about what's going on online," she said with a dismissive shrug. "I get so much love." Backlash was immediate and merciless. Basketball fans and media members alike meticulously dissected her press conference comments, comparing them word for word against her previous interviews where she'd painted herself as a constant target of racist abuse of in person. "I haven't ever had a negative encounter with a fan in person ever." The sheer magnitude of this contradiction was staggering. Just weeks earlier, Reese had tearfully claimed that her recent spate of TikToks mocking Clark with juvenile captions like, "white girl running from the fade." But this latest fabrication crossed a line even her most ardent supporters couldn't ignore. The Fever fans hurled racial slurs at her during crucial free throws. Before that, she'd made headlines accusing a white fan of physically blocking her team's entrance to their hotel, while this time, she'd overplayed her hand spectacularly. Her entire brand had been built on controversy, from her viral taunting of Caitlin Clark during their college championship game to her allegedly calling her a ghetto boy. Now, she was casually admitting that none of these horrific incidents ever actually happened in person, directly undermining her entire victimly the opposite assertion to anyone who would listen. Why had the WNBA been pressured into wasting resources on a pointless investigation? Why had major sports networks like ESPN, referees working the game? Players from both teams were questioned extensively. The conclusion was unanimous. Not a single witness could corroborate, but Reese's live on-camera admission was the final nail in the coffin of her crumbling credibility. If she'd truly never experienced racism from fans in person as she now claimed, why had she spent months making precise